Hello, hello, hello. What is up? Who's ready to talk about skepticism? I'm so excited for this topic. I've been really excited to go into this topic. I've just been getting more and more excited over the course of the week thinking about it. I think it's a really fun one. It's one that I've really immersed myself in growing up as a skeptic myself, who was also a tarot card reader in tandem. I've always been this weird kind of foot in both worlds growing up, constantly doubting my own practice. And also because we live in a, modern day is very secular and very skeptical. So there's you'll encounter this a lot. So in terms of trying to curate content for an aspiring tarot card reader, you need to talk about, you need to know how it is talking with skeptics, because that's just every, the 3 out of every 4 people you see, that conversation is going to come up if they're even interested in doing a tarot card reading, right? So I think it's a really fun conversation to get into. I drop secular tarot in the title because I'm going to illustrate today how secular tarot is the bridge. It is the form of tarot for the skeptic, for those of secular practice, and all the principles that come through in effective practice at secular tarot apply to tarot with a more spiritual inclination as well. It's secular tarot is a subset practice of tarot, so it's a lot of the same rules all apply, and anything that applies to secular tarot I think applies to any other tarot practice, save maybe the strict belief that there is no magical spiritual thing happening for readers that do have some sort of spiritual inclination or feeling associated with their practice. A lot of the same principles apply. And I've over the years I've had a pretty secular approach to my reading. I realized before I really knew that secular tarot was a thing, I was kind of secular tarot adjacent these years. So when I encountered it, I was delighted. I want to, of course, do a reading for us on the stream today, and I've been trying to decide what exactly I want this reading to be about, because I want it to relate to how we employ skepticism in our practice with tarot. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about today, is how skepticism is not bad for a tarot card reader, I don't think, to have. I think that the skepticism I've carried with me over the years has given my practice with tarot a really concentrated, discrete focus, and brought me to the practice of really explicit intention setting, and has helped me really keep direction going. I think that skepticism keeps us grounded and keeps us realistic. In excess, skepticism can make us closed-minded and limit our kind of intuitive interpretation or ability to bring things off the cards. But I'm going to touch on that briefly today, because I think it only really needs a brief mention. There's so much more interest about how skepticism can be employed effectively in your practice as a tarot card reader, and how the ways that you can apply it in your own practice will relate to how you can present it, to somebody else who may be skeptical, who may also be interested in a tarot card reading. Because there are so many people that exist in this in-between place of, I'm a little skeptical and I have my doubts about tarot card reading. And if you asked me up front, I would outright say it's kind of, I don't believe it. But I am morbidly curious in a way, or there's a little stirring in me that wants to know. I'm interested at least that much. I feel like this happens all the time. I've connected with so many people in that kind of premise, where we're kind of in that lukewarm water in between. And so I've almost, over the years, I called it my spiel. There was this conversation that I would just run every time in this kind of situation, where I just found I had this ability to appeal to skeptics as a reader, and to appeal to skeptics in a way that made them want to engage the process of doing a tarot reading with me. So that's, I guess, also in part why I'm very excited about this subject, because I feel like that's where a lot of my focus with tarot reading has been. How do I bring tarot reading into the secular realm? It has been a really big part of my practice over the years. What I want to do in terms of the intention I offer this reading for us on this stream is, grappling with my skepticism as a tarot card reader has been something that was an ongoing process. I would say somewhere in my mid-20s, it's 5 years ago, was when I finally settled into believing that there was a legitimate offering I was making when I was dealing with tarot cards, and that there was something legitimately powerful and meaningful and helpful happening there, and that it wasn't bull crap or what have you. I just was strong enough in my own conviction that at that point I could tell anyone, yes, I'm a tarot card reader. Yes, it's a good thing. Your opinion is your own, and that's fine. And it's not going to affect me and my own impression, or my own belief in my skill or my practice. So that to say, I spent the majority of my life as a tarot card reader with a lot of doubts of myself and the practice. So dealing with skepticism, especially when it's so prevalent and so strong in our, modern day society, is an ongoing process. It is an ongoing process. It's going to keep coming up, and you're going to have to keep working with it. It's not going to be the sort of thing where, I just have an aha kind of moment one day and I'm no longer skeptical the next. It's just not like that. We're so entrenched in our ideas, and there's so much that's nebulous and deep to explore about tarot to satisfy the plethora of questions that a skeptical nature will bring forth, that it's just not like that. It just doesn't happen that quickly. And especially if you're skeptical and you need scientific method, I'm going to need repeated evidence of proof here, that the reading is producing a certain kind of result. And that's, of course, what eventually got me to change my opinion in the end, many, many years later. It was just after hundreds of readings that all just had these weird moments where it was just like uncannily perfect, timely conversation for where they were at, keyed right into their personal experience of things. Like after it happens again and again and again, start to be like, okay, I come to expect this. I come to expect this because I have just ran the trial so many times that I can reasonably expect many of my readings will have that moment where that happens. And that's cool, right? But you really, really, really want to be able to explain why. Why did that happen? That's kind of, the appeal of the scientific approach, is the ability to deconstruct what's happening in a reading that creates this seemingly magical moment where we speak such fundamental, powerful truths to each other over some cards. And that's kind of where I ruminated for years. I was trying to answer why and how this happens, that I can do this, sit down with people with a deck of cards and produce a conversation that's, the kind of one that you would work in therapy for 3 months for to arrive at, but we just pulled it out there in that moment and said, let's fast forward. Here's where you're at. Here's where you'd like to go. Here's how you do it. And we lay it out in an hour. This is really like cool thing going on with the tarot reading. I've done it enough times to believe it myself, but always wanted to be able to explain how and why it happens. It took me that many years, and my answer to that was always evolving. And my answer today is still that my answer to that is always evolving, how and why it works exactly. But secular tarot offers a lot of definitive answers that I love and believe are all true in their application with tarot card reading, with any intention or purpose, secular or not. So that's what I'm excited to dive into, is how secular tarot describes just how tarot works in a way, or at least one way that it can by that lens. I know there are many people that subscribe to, the varying spiritual beliefs that they bring into this practice, and they can work within the secular framework as well, which I've said, many times here already. The reading that I want to offer us is to kind of point us to how we can work with our continued relationship with skepticism. For knowing in myself that it's been a relationship that has evolved so much over the many years I've gotten to live so far, I'd like to look at how that relationship evolves for us. Namely, there are many ways in which skepticism can hold back a tarot card reader, or at least, in my personal experience, I held myself back a lot with skepticism in terms of allowing myself to speak freely in a space where I could have achieved more in a reading because I was doubting myself. Anything that a lack of self-confidence is going to, dampen your end result, skepticism is going to apply that for the tarot card reader all the time. So part of what I want to look at in this reading is how we can mitigate skepticism holding us back, because skepticism is important in that it makes us double check and qualify everything and make sure, that what we're doing and what we're putting forward is something that's meaningful and reasonable and realistic. but it can be too hindering and too limiting if we get stuck in that evaluation stage and never do it or never do anything. You know, we can always trap ourselves with that self-doubt sort of thing. I'm just talking about that other half of skepticism that can come forward when you are eventually too skeptical. If you were to really find that line and be able to cross it, it's when you're holding yourself back and slowing yourself down from actually getting anything done because of how skeptical you are. This card, I want to illustrate for us the sort of method, mode, and mindset that we employ that helps us avoid falling victim to too much skepticism, to really give us a guideline for, you know, if you're arriving here, this is, you know, this is how you really pull yourself back towards not being too skeptical of yourself, how you really, you know, appreciate what skepticism can do for you, but not take it too far. This card shows you how to not take it too far. If I'm doing what this card illustrates, I'm probably going too far and being too skeptical of myself. This card, you know, can kind of function as a little red flag for us too. If I've arrived here and being too skeptical, just outline that for me. And then let's, you know, investigate and, you know, the discussion that evolves from that and see if that gives us some insight on how we handle skepticism for ourselves. There's another card that I want to consider in this reading for us here on the stream. And I will pull out actual tarot cards. This is a beautiful playing card deck I have. That was gifted to me by my lovely fiance, Sonora. Thank you, Sonora. This second card, I want to be more of a reference. You know, this one was telling me how do I avoid some of the detrimental aspects of skepticism as far as trying to employ effective practice with tarot and maybe do anything in my life. I want to look at how do I effectively employ skepticism? You know, where are the spaces that I'm existing in when suddenly it's really helping propel me forward in a meaningful direction? You know, skepticism gives us direction by limiting options. It says, let's not consider these unrealistic, wild things, and instead choose the one that's a sure bet to give us the return we're looking for. Skepticism offers very meaningful, potent, helpful direction. It's in that way, a very useful force, and we would be fools as tarot card readers to deny it and reject it entirely and lose its benefit, because then we get off into this nebulous world of no direction and wish-washy, ambiguous readings that aren't really going to help produce serious, clarified, definitive insight. There it is. I got two cards to kind of give me the roadmap to skepticism. I think that I'm going to flip those as we go through my discussion today, because I think there will be times where it'll be very relevant for them to come off. I set intention with these two cards in some very particular ways that fit the secular method. I want to go back and discuss a little bit. When I was talking about this card to show us the things we might want to avoid with skepticism, you know, I talked about, let's see what discussion evolves from it once we flip it over. In secular tarot, we're kind of looking at all the cards as this interesting system that has, you know, all these archetypes built in. There's so much meaning loaded into these cards. They serve as potent, random prompts to kind of organize and structure our thinking. Doing a tarot reading is a powerful, structured thought exercise where you're sitting down and you're saying, okay, what do I want in this situation? I'm really investigating a lot about myself and bringing that to the front of my mind. I'm trying to make a decision about something. I'm trying to, you know, discover something about myself a little deeper. Something. I'm prying. I'm really thinking. When we're thinking, we're just trying to discover something new through our own thoughts. And that's really fun. You spend a lot of time lost in thought, so I love doing that, which is, of course, why I love being immersed in tarot. It just offers a space where we can play in those thoughts and just develop them and kind of workshop them. The tarot cards offer a variety of random prompts connected to a variety of deep and meaningful topics and kinds of life lessons, you know, that we've kind of imbued their meaning with. And they give us moments to jog, kind of, and this is going to be the fun part about talking about secular tarot, jog our intuition, jog our unconscious mind in some ways. We're trying to use them to invite space for us to consider things that we might not have otherwise, and then follow up on what new thoughts came to us and the moment that we considered something in a way that we hadn't previously tried to consider it as. I pulled a random card to give me a certain way to think about my situation. When I did that, what came to me? Did anything new arise? Did it appear different to me? Did it leave me with more questions? What random place did I arrive in after prodding myself with a random thought? And that's why as we're setting up the card, I'm like setting up a lot of the roadmap of the thought process that I'm having leading up to the card. I'm giving it some direction to take off somewhere. And once I flip the card, I'm like, where is it taking me now? And I'm workshopping my ideas from there. But, the secular process is really entrenched in this simple idea that we're just thinking. We're using the cards to structure and guide our thoughts and conversation. I'm going to be really intentional about how we do that to lead us to a place that brings forth certain realizations that you're seeking, from a tarot card reading. We are sitting down because there are questions we have that we want to procure answers to. And, in the secular approach, it's much more of this mental exercise to develop the answer together. And I really like in the secular approach much more of the collaboration between reader and quorant instead of the straight reader just tells you everything that's going on, because that relies, of course, much more heavily on the reader just being able to make that lucky guess, and that starts treading us into more divinary territory than strictly secular work. Because, of course, in our secular tarot approach, tarot is going to even more strongly resemble the therapist's meeting. This is really so much more closely in its resemblance to counseling than any other form of practicing tarot. And tarot really is a form of therapy and counseling at its core. So, not to say that it isn't, just that we've stripped tarot bare of the magical side. Now it simply is. That's all that's left. It's just counseling, and sometimes magical counseling. And in the secular context, it is just straight method and tool for counseling, and it's a pretty cool one. It offers really interesting feelings and thoughts come forward when we're sitting with the cards, and they do structure a space for us to think with a really open mind about our situation, because we start to wonder if anything could come off the deck, and my situation could be anything. That really just puts us in a place where our mind is more open to receive new ideas or to really restructure our thinking on a situation. And that's part of the medicine. It's part of the process, really, and part of the, the finesse that comes into a tarot card reading, and definitely one of the strengths in the secular approach. And of course, I describe all of these because they satisfy skeptics. All of these terms are very satisfying to our skeptical minds because they offer really plain, simple, mundane explanations for where the magic and where the knowledge and where the insight comes out from a tarot card reading. And I shared earlier that I spent a lot of my life developing the ability to really connect with skeptics, even over tarot cards. Which, is a place that many skeptics don't originally think they'd necessarily want to be sit down and do. And really, I think that you can get so much work done, even with this, as a word like mundane sounds so diminishing. Even with this very practical mindset, you can get a lot done. In a tarot card reading, you don't need magic bells and whistles necessarily to get a lot of work done in a tarot card reading. So there's so much simple appeal and truth in the secular approach that makes it so inviting. My experience offering tarot card readings over the years has been that the more and more that I can characterize my practice in secular terms, the more and more broader appeal it actually has, and the more and more people I'm really able to connect with. And as a bonus, the more I'm able to have that conversation that gets us on the same page, having the same expectation before we start a reading, that avoids many of the how things can go wrong scenarios and readings that we talked about earlier on the shuffle. It's secular tarot is important, man. I'd encourage every reader to know it, even if they don't consider themselves secular themselves. But a lot of it stems from skepticism. And when you take skepticism too far, I will share at least for a moment, as someone who is now proudly proclaimed myself as somewhat skeptical, even in my practice with tarot, now I want to talk about where I recognized it going too far for me, or it actually held me back. Hi, Red Pepper. Good to see you. I don't know if I know who you are, at least by the name Red Pepper, but I'm glad you stopped in. Thanks. I don't know if you just got here, but we're talking about skepticism and secular tarot, and how to employ skepticism effectively as a tarot card reader, because it can be a force for good. But I'm going to talk about how it can be a force for a little bit here. Being skeptical of myself also sometimes means you're new here. Good, glad you're here. If you don't mind telling me where you heard about me, that would be great, because you know, I'm the little guy over here trying to do this. I really want to build this community, and I really want to meet people that want to learn how to read tarot. So I've been putting myself out there little bits here and there in different spaces, and hoping to meet some new people. I'm glad you're here. Thanks. I hope it's a good space for you. Skepticism has gone too far for me sometimes when, you know, if I spoke earlier a little bit about too much self-doubt. Too much self-doubt will hold yourself back, kind of hobble you before you've started. I've experienced this in readings. Sometimes I do so much circular language. I know I've already done it today here on the stream, so feel free to call me out. So much circular language around something before I just get to the point, because I'm like dropping all these prefaces of, you know, but, and trying to qualify and justify something before presenting the meat of it. Especially when I'm working with a skeptic and I'm, you looked up tarot on YouTube and I popped up. Let's go. Thanks, YouTube algorithm. Giving a shout out here to some of the little people. I love it. I'm glad that you found your way here. I hope this is interesting. If people ask me any questions, the whole point of this stream is that it's like a workshop, and I love teaching tarot. I've practiced tarot my whole life and taught a lot of people over the years. So, you know, offering it in the online public format here. I would love to offer my knowledge to anyone interested in tarot. So feel free to fire me questions in the chat there, and I'll work on it. Oh, and if you want to get a reading, of course, you can call in for a video call reading, and we can do it together on stream, which I think is super fun, and I know not everyone wants to do, but I love putting it out there, you know. So in readings, right, when I've been too skeptical sometimes, I end up doing this circular and like offering so many prefaces to what I want to say and trying to make it sound secular and trying to soften my approach and say, you know, well, maybe I'm about to offer you an idea that I expect is going to land really well and is going to be the direction you need, but I'm going to, you know, beat around the bush a little bit and be a little uncertain about it and all this in my delivery and take all this time. And I know that has in the past been an example of me being too skeptical of myself and bringing in a lot of self-doubt into a situation in a place where the doubt wasn't there. They weren't necessarily bringing it. I was. And in that moment, I'm kind of weakening my ability to deliver the messages that I'm getting in a tarot card reading, or to direct the conversation that we're having in a tarot card reading to more powerful places, because I'm just sitting here kind of spinning out in my own self-doubt. One thing to keep in mind, I've noticed my skepticism affect my readings for myself. When, you know, I'm like stopping myself from doing a reading because I don't believe that I can necessarily pull something meaningful out of it, or I'm starting to doubt the messages I'm getting off of the cards and not feeling confident in just my own thoughts, which is actually where the secular approach becomes a really nice, comforting place, because you can just start to ask yourself some really serious questions about, okay, well, why am I asking this? Let's get myself back on track. Where am I at? What am I feeling right now? And where am I hoping to move myself to? You know, the secular approach has answers to all of these places where you experience doubt. Yeah, for sure. Red pepper doubting ruins things. Yeah, not a surprise to us. I think we've all experienced doubt ruining us in one way or another. Not a surprise that it applies here. But fun to talk about how doubt can help. But anyway, I wanted to flip this card that I'd drawn with the intention earlier to show us here on the stream, a small group of us, how we can really approach mitigating doubt holding us back, mitigate doubt ruining us. You know, if we're in this kind of space, it's the territory where we're treading on a little too doubtful of ourselves. So I wanted to give some clarity to what that space could be. And since we're practicing secular tarot today, I am going to illustrate it as could be, remembering that all the cards that we flip are suggestions of ideas, and where they lead us in our thinking is the deeper wisdom that we pull out from the tarot card reading, and not to get too caught up or too weighty in any card indicating that things are one way or another or have to be one way or another. You know, the secular approach is very free of that. It's very light. It's very, you know, just, I'm not putting, you know, if I am skeptical, I'm not putting too much stock in the card telling me one thing has to be a certain way or another. I know that feeling, Red Pepper, getting chills. I love that feeling right before a card is drawn. I feel that too. Love the little perks of tarot practice, the little fun parts. But in any case, with all of this roundabout too much said before flipping the card that I just admitted I do all the time, I really want to look at when skepticism is too much. I love the Five of Diamonds here. I have a swift and simple read on this card, and I want to find it in my Robin Wood tarot deck here, just because having the illustrations of the tarot deck is so nice, especially when we're new and learning. I don't mind reading with playing cards because I'm so familiar with these cards at this point that Five of Diamonds, brought this picture to my mind right away. But for those of us that aren't quite as familiar with the tarot card deck, this is what it looks like in the Robin Wood. So remembering the very specific intention with which we drew this card, this was to illustrate the space in which we are practicing too much skepticism. We are doubting ourselves too much. And the Five of Pentacles is the moment that we find ourselves alone, kind of for our own behavior and for our own attitude, suddenly estranging ourselves from people. And, I kind of described this moment in the reading where if I'm noticing I'm the one imposing the self-doubt and the person I'm giving a reading is not, I'm the one that is putting distance between us and saying, I don't feel comfortable connecting with you this way in this conversation because I'm doubting myself. And in a way, I'm isolating myself in that moment. And that's really what comes through in the Five of Pentacles to me a lot. It's isolation in this, space where I am shut out and not connected to other people in a way, So that to say, here's our indicator of I've gone too far. I've been a little too skeptical, a little too doubtful here if I have isolated myself because of my skepticism. If I have outright removed the opportunity for further thought, for further connection, for us to go deeper, I've gone too far. Now I am just like holding myself down, holding myself back at this point. I know, right, Red Pepper? Anybody else here? That's funny. Oftentimes, and I'll share this with you because you brought it up, I found that people in my stream chat are very silent. There is definitely a cohort of some people who have been coming every week, and I super appreciate you guys, and I'm so glad that you are jazzed about learning tarot and down to do a weekly workshop on it. And we've fallen into this rhythm now where, like, I plan something and I have no problem riffing on tarot for any subject for an hour. I'm good to go. Happy. Don't need any prompts. I'll just roll. Love this, so passionate about it. But it's made this space where I can just kind of go on, and we fall into this rhythm where there's not a lot of feedback coming from the chat necessarily, which is why I keep trying to poke and prod and be like, you can hit me with it. But for the most space, Red Pepper, yes, I've been given a lot of space to just go stream of consciousness, just throw it out there. If you're interested in calling in on Zoom for the video thing, any of you, we could do a live lesson also. It doesn't have to be a reading. Right, Nico. Yeah, of course, you're multitasking. There are a lot of people who are like at work but tuning in, and it's kind of like that podcast in the background. It's like, oh, yeah, I listened, and I'll talk with you guys later about it. Thanks for preferring. Glad that you're glad to be here, too. I do this every week, every Thursday this time, and it's super fun. I'm super enjoying it. Because I'm not so skeptical and doubtful of myself and holding myself back that I'm stopping myself from doing it. I'm here. I'm connected with people. Yeah. Believing in myself. Thanks for that. Glad you appreciate the company there in the chat, Red Pepper. Yeah, we'll see. Hey, I've got dreams of that chat becoming a more bustling space, right? Got to start somewhere. Wow, it's 3 a.m. where you are, Red Pepper. Tarot is very calming. I agree. I often find tarot calming in my practice with it anyway, even just talking about it, I guess. 3 a.m. Trying to think where that puts you on the map. That is a little bit out there from where I am here on the west coast of the States. That is something. Thanks for tuning in. Burning the midnight oil. I'm gonna skip ahead because I really want to draw this other card that we prepared. And I kind of imagined myself setting it up a little more, but I kind of want it to spring me into my next segment, which is talking about really focusing more on the discrete benefits of skepticism and applying its practice in tarot. I've given a lot of hints already to how I see that happening, but it's hard to know when you're employing healthy skepticism versus when you're overthinking things. It's a kind of fine line to draw. And that's why I really wanted to open. Yeah, I thought that this card would be very revealing. This one felt to me to like what I like to call a no-brainer card. The what do we avoid, or when do we know we are being too skeptical card was like, well, when you've shut yourself out and you're totally alone and you've lost all your connection and everything is when you're being too skeptical. Kind of made sense, tracked for me. You know, sometimes you get you ask a straightforward question and you get a really straightforward answer. That's, yeah, you know, if you set the intention for a simple question, you're going to draw out a really simple answer. And Red Pepper, I get you being an overthinker. I think that in the same breath where earlier I was talking about loving thinking and loving being in this space where I just think all the time, I think that also we are also the overthinkers, right? Where we're going to be living in that space so comfortably that it's just, I just want to be there thinking about things and solving my problems by thinking about them more. And if it's a problem that requires action and not thought, I'm just going to spin out in my really comfortable, familiar, anxious space here in my overactive thoughts that I'm just going to keep spinning out in. Yes, this is, you know, that's the routine, right? So yeah, hard to draw the fine line, not to get so down on ourselves for being skeptical and doubtful all the time, you know, because it's so often and so typical and so easy for us to recognize how it holds us back or is holding us down. I think it's really healthy to focus on its positive aspects, how to employ those, and how to give us some focus that when I am feeling skeptical or doubtful of myself, like, what do I do to what is the signaling for me? You know, what's the purpose of this feeling? What's the merit to feeling or thinking this way, really, that I can draw forward in the situation while I'm knee deep in it? And that can really help us, you know, take an uncomfortable feeling and set it on track and in a direction that helps us out a little bit instead of holding us back. So that's why I'm excited about that. I don't want to wait for this card, you know, I'm ready for it. Oh, wow. How interesting. Really. Four of Swords was an interesting one because this is really the card that says, don't think. This is the moment of mental rest, of reposit, of literally just not thinking, of meditating, of clearing your mind, taking a break. When we have employed skepticism appropriately, it lays rest to our thoughts. Our questions are satisfied. We have reached definitive answers and arrived at this moment where there is no more to think about. Honestly, there's a little bit of that suggestion that feels to me like a pretty high bar for a lot of, you know, because there's a lot of questions that can come up that have really complicated or nuanced answers that can be really anxiety producing the whole way through considering them and sometimes not even have a totally satisfying answer or conclusion for some time. So seeing the suggestion that, you know, when you've employed skepticism or self-doubt effectively, it's, oh no, wait, that makes sense. It's when it puts you at ease. If skepticism or self-doubt's putting you at ease and putting you in this really rested, relaxed Four of Swords state, that's some healthy skepticism. You know, I'm the way I am and I'm holding myself back these ways because it's benefiting me in these ways and I'm done. And I can be at peace and not think about it further. There's nothing gnawing at me, you know? If I were in a space where there was something nagging at me, like I'm still not satisfied with the answer I'm getting, I'm being skeptical of my own talent, or I'm being skeptical and doubtful of myself, and what it's leaving me with is this feeling of dissatisfaction, that there's something wrong, that there's something that needs to be fixed, that's not effective employment of the self-doubt. You know, that's not putting me in this rested Four of Swords place where I've really like come to peace and I'm at ease with my thoughts. Kind of suggests to us, you know, if I am starting to feel some self-doubt, what can I ask myself that'll resolve this, satisfy the questions that I'm asking myself? Or what am I attached to? What am I feeling that is holding me from being in a place of peace and rest with this thought? There's a handful of different suggestions you could take off that Four of Swords. And I'm offering some of the alternative ways you could interpret it because that's a big part of, you know, practicing tarot, is that there's a lot of different ways to interpret a card. And especially in the secular approach, I think that it's much more about being explorative, about, you know, what comes up to you from that suggestion. I was not thinking Four of Swords when I was thinking of direction to effectively employ skepticism. And I think it's important to think about how you could answer the question that a card is offering before you flipped it, because if I have an obvious answer to how to effectively employ skepticism and self-doubt for yourself, like, that's what I'm going to tell you regardless of what this card is. Like, it doesn't matter, right? So it's interesting how sometimes the card that appears can highlight certain aspects of our answer and get us to frame it a certain way. But when a card outright comes and kind of defies our expectation, I think is when a tarot reading starts to get some really interesting twists. And it kind of challenges us to think a little differently than we did before. And I know that this Four of Swords caught me a little off guard. And when I thought about it a little more, it kind of made some sense for me. And settled into, okay, peace, calm, and clarity are nice things. If your self-doubt is resulting in those, that's some pretty good, healthy skepticism right there. If it's really not making you anxious, then that's great, right? Wow. I see you there in the chat there, Red Pepper, resonating with the word rest. You just came out of your hermit mode and you don't want to go back in. Good for you that you're getting out here. This is a light social space. I think that hopping streams and stuff and interacting with people on streams and with other stream communities. I love that you're putting yourself out there. To Rachel and Nicolo. Yeah, I know I love it, Rachel. You're doing other stuff around the house. Yeah, I think a lot of people are listening in that sort of mid-ground setting. To the stream here. I love having you here at the forefront, Red Pepper. You're in my front seat. But in terms of what this card brought up for me, it was like, yeah, rest came up, and I love how when we're doing a tarot card reading, if I'm using a word like rest because that came to me to this card, and I offered a lot of words, and this will happen in a reading. And when you're considering the mechanics of the secular approach and how it works, I'm going to offer a lot of words, and for different people, different words will resonate and kind of convey the message that I was trying to embody in the card, more or less, or convey a message to that person that brings something forward for them that they suddenly want to add to the conversation. Rest resonated with me because, as you said, Red Pepper, I've come out of hermit mode and I don't want to go back. You're here engaging people in the stream, wandering the internet. That's super cool. Yeah. And, in the secular approach, we just follow the conversation from there. If we're having a conversation about self-doubt, it's cool for you to see that, if you're putting yourself out here, you're out of hermit mode. But let's imagine that if you do go back to hermit mode later, because our moods, all the time are cyclical, how do we make hermit mode something that we're employing with healthy respect to our skepticism and our self-doubt? Because honestly, both of these cards capture hermit mode to me in different ways. There's very different quality and character to these hermit modes. Because in the Five of Pentacles, there's kind of this wish that I wasn't the leper outside the church and that I was in. I'm a hermit, but not by my own design necessarily, or at least even if by my own design, not by my intention or my explicit choosing. I've been shut here because I doubted myself so much I didn't connect myself to anyone, because I doubted myself so much that I haven't even gotten started. This is a hermit space that is isolated because I doubted myself too much in this reading, right? This is also, to me, a very hermity space. It's so restful. I'm not out there engaging people in this space, but I am experiencing self-doubt in the context of this reading. I was like, I want to illustrate two different experiences of self-doubt, characterize one as how we can employ self-doubt to harm us, hinder us, one as to help us, further us forward. Here's the further us forward. When I'm feeling that self-doubt, instead of feeling isolated, lonely, and alone, I'm just feeling like this is my recharge time. Whatever, I'm a hermit, I'm resting. You need a calm after a lot of action. Four of Swords follows the Three of Swords, which is a hell of a lot of action, man. That is like hardcore action, a lot of serious consequences that you're dealing with. The Four of Swords is a much needed rest after that storm. And it's just this time that we're taking for ourselves where we're recognizing I'm spent. I'm tired. I know my limitations. I'm not just doubting myself. I'm not just being too skeptical of my own ability. I know my limitations. I need rest. For whatever reason, I need emotional rest because I stretched myself that way this week. I need a mental rest. I need physical rest, whatever I need. If I am feeling, uncertain that I could do something, say something, pull something off, and I feel like it's just because I need a break, sure. That sounds like a totally reasonable time to have some, control of yourself. It's not even self-doubt at this point, is it? It's just a really realistic understanding of your limitations. Doubt is just the, expression of limitation at an excess, where I'm limiting myself where I didn't need to, where limitations didn't exist except for the ones that I imposed myself with my doubt. And this is where I'm recognizing that, sometimes I do have realistic limitations. And this isn't just because I'm doubting myself too much. I'm just being honest. I don't have the energy for that today. Okay? Call you tomorrow. Whatever. Red Pepper, I love that as an emoji for hermit mode during the pandemic. Cat in a box. Yes, I've felt that way every day waking up in bed. Yeah, that's perfect. That's really good. And I really I hope that was a fair demonstration of how, in a secular approach, we just used these two cards to evolve and develop a conversation around a topic that we chose and gave some pretty clear intention before we went in. I already had a clear idea of what kind of conversation we were getting into and maybe what some of the kinds of answers that I would supply before we flipped these face up. I explained that. That's very important to do, even outside of the secular approach, which is what I've been saying all day. These are great principles for tarot card reading. They are also the core ones of the secular approach, but they're everyone. You should always do this. Practice responsibly. Ask meaningful questions. Set clear intentions. I like that. Actually, after getting through those two cards, that's put me at a certain kind of ease in feeling like when I'm feeling self-doubt, as soon as I catch myself doing it in a way where I'm isolating myself, and I'm so guilty of this, I go through my hermit moods pretty hardcore. I hermit a lot, actually. Hermit all the time. Hermit with a lot of my time. I love hermiting. I have this, kind of ambivert personality, right? Where I'm cool with a lot of introverted time, cool with some extroverted time. Here I am on stream, right? Putting myself out there, but I love my recharge time. I'm big on it. And I hermit a lot, but sometimes I hermit because I'm feeling sad or like I'm not worthy of connecting with other people or that other people wouldn't be interested in me or, whatever kind of depression I'm, kind of crushed with in that day. I could be doing that. I'd like to make a special shout out and apology to Rachel, who I know is here and listening, whose calls I have many times not gotten back to in a timely manner. I am so sorry. That sprang to my mind, of course, because of the many days I've felt like a depressed hermit and not reached out to you, and I'm so sorry. I know how frustrating that can be to be on the receiving end of. So there's my public apology to you. Thanks for being here at my stream. But yeah, I feel that, and there are plenty of times that I have done hermit mode like this, where I could have called Rachel that day and probably had a good conversation, felt a little better and gotten, some honest human connection. But I was holding myself back because I wasn't feeling good enough or up to it, right? I wasn't feeling good enough about myself to share myself. And maybe that's an indicator of a time where I took my self-doubt, my self-criticism, and my own self-limitation too far. And kind of took away from myself what could have been more beneficial connection. As opposed to, I've had plenty of these days too. I love these days. Love a good restful day. This is going to be my evening after the live stream, I do all this. I get to connect with a bunch of people and reaching out to people all day and talking about tarot. And then I'm going to take my evening and relax and just have time with myself and my fiance and just chill out, and it's going to be great, I'm all about that. That healthy introverted time. The right time to take to yourself. I'm jazzed that you're here, Red Pepper. Thanks for being here. It's been really fun putting myself in the public sphere, just diving out to YouTube and other social media platforms. And I really have the dream of creating a much broader and interactive space to learn tarot here. I am curious, Red Pepper, while you've been here, if you are a tarot card reader, or if it's something that you're interested in, if you've had a reading before, just what your history is with tarot. It's usually something I ask a lot of people when I'm going to sit down and do a reading with them, because it helps us in the forming a similar joint expectation for the reading. It, just understanding what preconceptions someone's bringing into a reading is big, because that's the page that we're starting from in terms of beginning our work together in a reading. You are a tarot card reader. That's awesome. Happy to hear. How long have you practiced? How deep are you? Because I wonder, you're my audience, right? I'm like, what sort of beginner, intermediate, advanced kind of level and amount of experience should I be talking to here in terms of what I offer about my own practice? Pulling in Skeptics, man. Sorry, as soon as I thought about talking about my practice, I was like, pulling in Skeptics has been my practice so much, because of course, being of a somewhat skeptical personality myself, those are people that I connected with over the years. So even just my friends in the groups that I immersed myself in were ones that leaned skeptical, which meant that as a tarot reader and practicing tarot in those circles, I learned and practiced how to sell myself to the skeptics, and being one myself just stumbled into secular tarot. It was just so natural. It was just the way. Love it. You still got to learn. You'd say you're about intermediate. Very cool. Very cool. I think that's a wonderful place to be. I think that I called myself intermediate for years and years and years, probably way more years than I should have, before admitting to myself that I'd been doing it long enough. I think that a lot of us tarot card readers live with imposter syndrome. I've one of the people that I had the pleasure of knowing while they were just still learning how to read tarot cards is now a much more accomplished reader in their own right. Wilder, I don't know if you're here today. But I've heard them talking about feeling imposter syndrome as a tarot card reader. And I know that they're, I'd put them into the advanced category, way past intermediate at this point. I've seen their work. I've gotten readings from them. They're great. But yeah, it is a bit for me to feel the almost presumption to present myself as a professional tarot card reader. I don't often like to self-plug. I'm much more keen on being critical of myself than boasting, right? Depending on my mood, maybe, you catch me at the right time and place, and especially on a subject like tarot that I'm so confident in, and you'll get a different impression. But in any case, all that to say that I feel a certain bit of that imposter syndrome putting out myself in a way, presenting as a professional tarot card reader. I've been offering readings professionally, where it's a, contracted paid relationship here for like 7 or 8 years now. Beyond the 25 years of just immersion and reading cards beyond that, right? And still I doubt it. There's so much skepticism toward this practice, and no really common mainstream lens that offers it that much legitimacy to kind of latch onto and relate to. It's very easy to fall back into feeling skeptical of my legitimacy as a reader or of this as a practice, right? And I think this is going to be a common challenge for a lot of readers practicing in the modern day. All that to say, I have developed a certain amount of confidence, enough that I'm here now talking to you in this context and this way, presenting myself such, which has been great. Really, really have enjoyed. I think that one of the things I've enjoyed most about my practice with tarot card reading is it's really directed me how to really connect in deeply emotional ways with people, in a way where we're sharing this beautiful emotional support for each other. And just to characterize relationships in my life with that as a context and a framework and a bedwork foundation for them from the beginning. If I've met someone as a tarot card reader, our first conversations are these kind of ones that we just shared together here on the stream, where we're really going deep into our emotional experiences about things, our thoughts about things, and trying to workshop life. And that's a really fun place to meet people. I have loved the kinds of relationships that have evolved in my life over the years as a tarot card reader. And like I said, because of the friends I align myself with, finding the skeptical, secular appeal to card reading has been the name of the game for me, to make those connections happen. And I really do think that in the secular approach, that emotional component is so accessible, and will come to the forefront in a reading, because that's oftentimes how we're employing the practice, is to address some of these areas of emotional duress or emotional turbulence or emotional uncertainty and emotional unrest, are things that we live stream energy channeling. Red Pepper, you suggest, yes, that is something I could try. That's of course leaning us more into the spiritual intentions toward this kind of work, which I have discussed plenty and love discussing and practicing even, although I did spend most of my time here today really trying to embody the secular mindset, to really represent the potency there lies in the secular mindset, even with the practice here with cards. Live stream energy channeling. I love when people suggest to me a lot of these kinds of practices that I have seen other live streamers and other social media kind of tarot personalities do, and I've been trying to think for myself how I would embody these in my own practice, because for me something like live stream energy channeling triggers all of those signals on my skeptical side so much, right? So you suggest that, and immediately I'm doing this. How would I personally execute live stream energy channeling in a way that I thought I could offer it, in a way that I'd really be keen people into an experience to be able to connect with me in a meaningful way and take something away. My head got churning a little bit. And I think that I'll close out our stream today with a little bit of energy channeling, and I'll do it with a secular slant, because I think that's possible here. Because it's cool. Suddenly now I want to talk about the concept of energy channeling from a it is all about feeling. It's natural, right? I was about to say, let's talk about energy channeling from the secular approach. And you just illustrated it right there in the chat, Red Pepper. It's more like I'm calling for us all to share a certain feeling together and to imbue it with some more power through our joint intention, that we're all agreeing to meet there in that kind of emotional space. Take a deep breath and meet ourselves, meet each other there. And there's something profound about that connection with everyone, to know that we're in this simultaneous live moment here, sharing something. We feel that kinship, that humanity in that moment. And that's really powerful. There's a lot of power in that, in the kind of, energy and impression and feeling it gives each of us. Just that we're joined together in this same moment, sharing these same thoughts, has a certain power to it. That's why I'm like, I'm working on developing some, standalone content. I'm trying to get Reels, TikToks, and some YouTube videos lined up. But I love the live setting. I love this. There's magic in the moment. The present moment is where the magic lies, and us agreeing to share it together in a certain way. Yes, you've characterized it. That's energy channeling to me and to someone with a secular approach. That is all of us doing a meditative energy exercise to sit together and say, let's share in this feeling for a moment, just to be there together, feel that humanity, that camaraderie, and move on from there. Red Pepper, I love you. Yes, that is why I love live streams, is because there is something uniquely special about sharing the present moment. And that's cool. I'm glad that you're here bringing that spirit and that energy. Thanks for channeling that into our live stream. I love this topic. I love secular tarot because my practice is so adjacent to it and honestly imbued with it. I think that the secular approach is a lot of what I've considered to be at least somewhat unique about my practice. Not every reader you meet is a secular one. I've, of course, gone poking around and found the secular tarot communities out there, so I know I'm not alone, but they're definitely smaller than the larger tarot community, So it is an interesting and sometimes apparently offbeat approach. And presenting it as such can be fun, sometimes disarming to people in a reading because it defies expectations a little bit, but sometimes disappointing in a reading if people were expecting and wanted something different or more spiritual than the secular approach and the secular offering. So that to be considered when you're offering a secular tarot reading, of course, and to clear up before you dive in. I got through my thoughts on secular tarot a lot faster than I thought I would. I was worried that this week I was going to be like running short on time, because I'm passionate about tarot and I love talking about tarot, of course, but especially this subject, I was just super jazzed to get to discuss with you guys. So thanks for being here and listening in every week, especially those of you who really have been. I super appreciate it because I love doing this, and it's, it doesn't happen without you. Really, it's not the same. It's about us sharing this moment together, and it wouldn't be the same if you weren't sharing it, right? That's what I want to do to close out our stream today. Is I want to talk about that energy channeling. I want us all to meet in a space and share a certain energy that we just close off and leave the stream with. We talked a lot today about hermiting, when it's great and when it's not so great. And I just want to wish all of us, just kind of peacefulness, I guess. I hope that we can all realize where in our lives we are being too doubtful of ourselves, holding our self back kind of needlessly. I hope that we all realize the places that we do have limitations and that we can helpfully recognize them. I want us to feel empowered and realistic and feel safe because of the realistic boundaries that we hold for ourselves. Feel safe because of our measured, responsible skepticism. And feel safe because of our measured amounts of self-doubt that protect us from making foolish mistakes, but not limited by them. In terms of energy channeling, I just want to sit with you all for a moment while we feel that courage to have confidence in ourselves and that wisdom to recognize our limits, and just to feel like we're in that space together for just a moment. Knowing what that feels like makes it easier to really do later, You can just recall this moment, this feeling, this mindset, this idea that we produced over cards. Thanks, everyone. That's tarot in a nutshell, I guess. Okay, I'm going to close this up for this week, and I'll see you next.